The twin suns of Erebus 9 rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson. The colony had always been a quiet place, peaceful, far from the noise and politics of the inner systems. Farmers drove their crawler tractors through the fields. Children walked the learning domes with small backpacks. The air was cool, clean, and filled with the sound of morning winds. For most of the people living there, life was simple. They worked, they raised families, and they dreamed of one day visiting Earth, the home world that few of them had ever seen. To them, the wars of the past were far away, just stories told by grandparents. The galaxy had been peaceful for too long. Nobody believed true danger would ever find them. But danger had already found them. It was just still traveling through space. At the edge of the system, a fleet of gigantic ships moved silently, each one carrying the insignia of the Ket Dominion, 3 curved blades over a crimson star. Their hulls glowed faintly, cutting across the dark. Inside those ships were soldiers bred for obedience and leaders who saw humans as nothing more than pests spreading into their territories. The Keth had decided they wanted Erebus 9. Its position was perfect for a new military outpost. They didn't ask, they didn't negotiate, and they didn't warn. The Dominion never asked permission from lesser species. Back on the surface, Captain Mira Cole of the Erebus Defense Command stood on a balcony, sipping her first cup of coffee. She watched the sunlight climb across the domes below and smiled. She had spent half her life serving the Terran fleet and had retired here 5 years ago to escape politics and war. She wanted peace. She believed her people had earned it. Then her communicator beeped. "Captain, you need to come to the command center. Now!" Her smile faded. "What is it?" "Unidentified contacts in orbit. Big ones." Within minutes, alarms began to scream across the colony. Windows trembled. Civilians looked up toward the sky as bright streaks of light appeared through the clouds. The air shuddered with the deep rumble of engines that were not human. Mira reached the command deck and saw the display. Dozens, no, hundreds, of blips glowed red. They surrounded the planet like a steel ring. "Confirm them," she ordered. Her officer swallowed. Ket Dominion battleships. Full fleet. The entire control room fell silent. No one spoke for several seconds. The Keth had no reason to be here. No warnings, no diplomatic signals. A faint, emotionless voice suddenly echoed through every frequency. "This world now belongs to the Dominion. All humans must evacuate immediately. Non-compliance will result in destruction." Gasps filled the room. People thought it was a mistake, some kind of joke. A mining world like Erebus 9 had no military importance to anyone. But the voice repeated itself again, calm and final. Then the skies opened up. A beam of white light slashed down from orbit, cutting through a distant mountain ridge. The explosion rolled across the land, followed by 2 more blasts near the main city. Screens lit up with emergency messages. Power grids failed. Noble stations shattered. "Shields up," Mira shouted, but it was useless. The colony's defenses were civilian-grade. They weren't designed to stop warships. Outside, people ran. Parents grabbed their children and tried to reach the old mines for shelter. The artificial sky domes cracked under the heat of plasma strikes. Ground tremors shook every building. Sirens howled, and the smell of smoke and burning metal filled the air. "Send a distress call to every human outpost," Mira said. "We're trying. The signal's being jammed." She slammed her hand against the console. "Keep trying. Somebody has to hear us." But nobody came. 30 minutes later, the Keth stopped firing. Their ships re-entered orbit and slowly drifted away, leaving nothing behind but dust, silence, and ruin. The main city was gone. The skies burned red with smoke. Of the 50,000 humans who had lived on Erebus 9, only a few thousand were still alive, and most of them were wounded, trapped in shelters, or lost in the wastelands. In the ruins of Command Center, Mira stood beside the shattered window, staring at the stars. "They did this," she whispered. "They slaughtered families." "For what?" "Territory." Jalen, her young officer, coughed and wiped soot from his face. "Should we send another signal?" "We already sent one," she said. "If anyone's listening, it'll be enough." The signal did reach someone. Hours later, the Terran Council received Myra's last transmission, a message of static and broken words. "This is Erebus 9. We are under attack. Keth fleet in orbit. Civilians. Dead. No provocation. Please, someone." Then nothing. The next few days were filled with confusion. The Keth Dominion claimed the colony had harbored terrorists. They said they acted in self-defense and showed fabricated evidence. The Galactic Council believed them, or pretended to. Humanity demanded an investigation, but no one listened. The Keth were too powerful, too influential, so the Council did nothing. There was no justice, no apology, no punishment. Across the galaxy, human worlds mourned the loss quietly. News broadcasts were short and emotionless. Erebus 9 incident, they called it like it was just another accident. But something had changed. Something deep and cold had awakened inside the human race. On Earth, the major cities still shone brightly. But behind those lights, secret meetings were held. Leaders spoke in whispers. Retired admirals were recalled to duty. Old shipyards reopened. Research stations received sudden, silent funding increases. Across the colonies, small fleets began to vanish from public records. Civilians were told they were being relocated for safety. In truth, they were joining something larger, a united human force that had not existed for centuries. And throughout every human world, 3 simple words spread like a flame. We remember Erebus 9. Those words were carved into starship hulls, printed on uniforms, and repeated in quiet voices across mess halls and command decks. No one shouted for revenge. No one broadcast threats. Humanity only fell silent. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Alien ambassadors sent messages asking if everything was fine. The humans smiled politely, but the warmth in those smiles was gone. The Galactic Council tried to speak with human representatives, but the Terran delegation stopped responding. Empty seats appeared in the council chamber, where humans once sat, and argued passionately. Now, those seats remained dark and still, and somewhere in the black between the stars, small fleets gathered, silent, hidden, waiting for the order that would change everything. The galaxy thought humanity was grieving, but in truth it was preparing. It was a silence before the war. Weeks turned into months after the fall of Erebus 9. For most of the galaxy, it became old news, a forgotten headline buried under trade disputes and political speeches. The Keth Dominion continued to grow stronger, building new stations where cities of humans once stood. The Galactic Council moved on, but within human space, something had changed forever. Earth went dark. Not literally. Its light still glowed across the night side, but communication slowed, then stopped. Official messages from the Terran Council became rare, short, and strangely emotionless. The usual debates and cultural exchanges with other species simply ended. Even human traders, once known for their friendliness, had become quiet, distant, and cold. Alien merchants noticed first. They would dock at human stations expecting smiles and open conversation, but instead found guards with blank faces and scanners that lingered too long. Some said they could feel the anger in the air, thick and sharp like static. Others said it wasn't anger, it was focus, deep under old shipyards on Mars. Construction began in total silence. The massive hangars that once built civilian transports now forged warships under different names. Documents labeled Science Expansion Program hid research on advanced shield harmonics, stealth alloys, and antimatter drives. Humans were designing something powerful, something impossible to ignore. But outside human territory, few believed it. Most alien politicians thought humans were licking their wounds, mourning their loss. They're emotional creatures, said high lords and senators in council halls. They'll cry, then they'll move on. The galaxy nodded and turned its gaze elsewhere. Then the first reports arrived. A Keth patrol ship, stationed near the edge of their newly claimed sector, went silent. Sensors picked up only faint fragments of wreckage and a single coded pulse. When translated, it formed a short message burned into the ship's black box. We remember. The Keth brushed it off as a pirate attack, until a week later, 2 more of their scouts disappeared. Then 5. Then 12. Their distress calls were all the same, static, then silence. Finally, one patrol sent a live transmission before vanishing. The crew spoke in panic as their instruments flickered. Multiple contacts, unreadable signatures, approaching fast. Then all went dark. For 3 seconds, the black box continued recording a faint human voice through the noise. Erebus 9 says hello. That moment spread across the Keth Dominion, like a whisper of death. In the Galactic Council, representatives demanded answers. The Keth called it minor terrorism and promised swift retaliation. But when they sent investigative fleets into the affected region, they found nothing. The space there was empty. Too empty. Even the starlight seemed swallowed by something unseen. Rumors began to spread among freight pilots and miners. Ghost ships, black as the void, moving in perfect silence through asteroid belts. Survivors said they never showed on radar until it was too late. Some described hearing human voices over open channels just before their ships were destroyed. Calm, cold, deliberate. Soon, alien news networks called it the Human Ghost Fleet. Nobody could confirm its existence, but no one could disprove it either. Inside human borders, no one denied it. The Terran Council simply refused to comment. In government halls and hidden bases, the truth was clear: humanity had united. For the first time in its history, every colony, moon, and station answered to a single command structure. Petty arguments of politics and borders had ended. The fleets of Earth, Mars, and Luna flew under one banner: the Terran Vanguard. They weren't fighting for expansion. They weren't fighting for profit. They were fighting for memory. For Erebus 9. In a hidden command chamber orbiting Earth, Admiral Reese Talone, an old veteran with silver hair and sharp eyes, stood before a virtual map dotted with red and blue signals. Around him, officers whispered tactical updates. Thousands of ships awaited orders in the shadow of Jupiter. Talone placed a hand on the table's edge. "Any word from the recon division?" A young officer nodded. "Yes, sir. They confirmed the last of the Erebus survivors made it to the Ark station. Civilians are safe." He exhaled slowly. "Good. Then it's time." "Time for what, Admiral?" Talone looked out the viewport toward the glowing curve of Earth. "For the galaxy to remember who we are." Across human space, production lines thundered with quiet efficiency. Factories ran through endless nights, and entire asteroid belts became shipyards. Every freighter was stripped down and reinforced. Every mining drone was rebuilt into a weapon platform. Humanity was preparing not just to defend itself, but to hunt. And still, they said nothing. The humans didn't send threats. They didn't demand justice. They didn't ask for the Council's attention. Their silence said enough. Every alien world watching them could feel it. The pressure building, the storm gathering strength. Some alien leaders grew nervous. A few even reached out in secret, offering apologies and trade partnerships. But no message ever came back. The humans weren't open to negotiation. Not anymore. Meanwhile, the Keth continued to lose ships near the border. Entire convoys disappeared into nothing. When they deployed larger fleets to investigate, all they found were floating husks, metal torn clean through by impossible precision. There were no survivors, no distress signals, only those same carved words, glowing faintly on the last metal wall standing. "We remember Erebus 9. At last, fear started to whisper through the halls of the Keth Dominion. Commanders who once mocked humanity began to lock their star lanes. Naval patrols doubled. The proud Dominion that thought it ruled half the galaxy now jumped at shadows. Stories spread among lower ranks. How human ships never appeared on radar until firing range. How they used stolen Keth technology against the original owners. How they left survivors alive only to tell others of their vengeance. Ordinary people across the galaxy began to ask questions. Why are the humans so quiet? Where did their fleets go? Why has no one seen a Terran ambassador for months? And one day, the Galactic Council chamber sat almost empty. The human seat remained dark, untouched, gathering dust. Those who were present felt uneasy. One elder from the Thar Confederacy leaned toward a Keth representative and asked quietly, "Do you think they're afraid?" The Keth ambassador gave a harsh laugh to hide his unease. Humans are unpredictable, not dangerous. But deep inside, he didn't believe his own words. Because every night, across the border of Keth space, scanners would pick up faint movements, tiny, brief flickers of heat that vanished before confirmation, like eyes watching, waiting, and somewhere in that endless dark, the fleets of humanity prepared their next move. The storm was coming. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the silence of humanity was not peace. It was the deep breath before the strike, the calm before vengeance that would echo from star to star. The Keth Dominion had ruled its part of the galaxy for more than 2,000 years. It had crushed rebellions, enslaved minor species, and burned planets without remorse. But never in all that time had it faced an enemy like humanity, an enemy that didn't threaten, didn't beg, and didn't speak. For nearly 6 months after the first disappearances, the Dominion denied that anything was wrong. Their commander said the vanishings were due to pirates or engine failures. Their propaganda called the rumors of human ghost fleets emotional nonsense. But deep in their war councils, fear had begun to take root. Convoy after convoy was lost. Patrol ships vanished without a trace. Sealed black boxes were found drifting through space, each carrying the same faint message burned into encrypted memory. Erebus 9 remembers. The first real retaliation came quietly, so quietly that no one realized it was the beginning of a war. A Dominion supply convoy, 10 war freighters, 3 battleships, and 2 escorts, was making its way through a narrow region of stars known as the Obsidian Reach. It was a dark sector filled with dust clouds and magnetic storms. Perfect for hiding. Commander Vathen, the convoy's leader, stood aboard his flagship, watching the scanners blink green. Everything was routine. Every ship in formation, every signal accounted for. Suddenly, one of the escort ships flickered off the radar. Vathen frowned. "Report status on the Havoc." "Signal law, sir," replied an officer. Could be interference from a magnetar field. He stared at the hollow, empty space on the display. Reacquire. No ship vanishes without cause. Moments later, another it disappeared. Then, before anyone could react, the communication lines went dead. The main screen went dark. "The entire rear defense line's gone," shouted the comms officer. Before the crew could recover, something massive tore through the dust clouds. Sleek shapes, black as the void itself, moving in perfect silence. They appeared without light, without scanners, almost ghost-like. "Identify them." Vathen roared. "No transponders, no readings, just heat signatures. Wait, sir, they're human." The Dominion ships barely had time to raise shields before the attack began. Blinding streaks of kinetic fire crashed through their formation. Rail slugs, magnetically accelerated, sliced through armor like paper. The first battleship exploded, its reactors blooming into blue fire. From the shadows, human ships emerged, smaller, faster, crafted for precision. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive camouflage. No two looked identical. Some were old Earth designs rebuilt with alien parts. Others were entirely new, sharp-edged, and lethal. "Return fire." Vathen barked, but his crew couldn't see where to aim. The human ships didn't show on scanners. They jammed signals, cut engines to glide silently, and vanished between salvos. Inside one of those ships, Captain Miracole watched from her command chair, eyes fixed on the tactical hologram. The vengeance she had promised on Erebus 9 was finally real. Her flagship, the Black Dawn, was part of the Terran Vanguard's first hidden strike group. "Target the lead cruiser," she ordered softly. "Make it fast. No survivors." Her gunner smiled grimly. "Aye, Captain." A ripple of light arced from the Black Dawn, piercing the Dominion cruiser's bridge. The enemy ship split in two, flames dancing in vacuum. Within 20 minutes, the entire Keth convoy was gone. No human radio chatter, no celebration, no trace of presence, just wreckage and silence drifting through the Obsidian Reach. 2 days later, Keth's search teams found a surviving escape pod. Inside was Commander Vathen, barely alive, babbling about shadows and unseen hunters. On the side of his pod, etched deeply into the metal, were 4 hand-carved words. For Erebus 9, we remember. The message spread faster than any broadcast could have. The Keths censored it, but the galaxy already knew. Whispers filled space stations and trade routes. Humanity had struck back. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Most representatives demanded proof. Others wanted peace. A few, the oldest civilizations, remained silent, remembering ancient stories about what humans were capable of when pushed too far. An old Thar scholar spoke softly to the room. Do you know why we called them the apex species during first contact centuries ago? It was not because of strength or numbers. It was because when their world is threatened, they stop being individuals. They become one will. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, in human space, the Terran vanguard continued to expand. The Black Dawn's victory was only the beginning. Fleets gathered quietly in system after system. Engineers on Luna perfected microwarp field engines. Scientists in orbit over Earth tested EMP shrouds that could blind enemy sensors. Old defense stations were reactivated and refitted with new weapons. Humanity didn't plan a heroic charge. They planned a hunt. And hunt they did. Every week brought new reports. A Dominion communications relay vanished. A mining world's defense grid malfunctioned. Its satellites destroyed before anyone could even identify the attacker. Keth officers began refusing assignments near human borders. Their families whispered that the stars themselves had turned hostile. The phrase, "Remember Erebus 9, became a curse in Keth tongues, a warning told to frighten recruits. Ships began painting over the Dominion symbols on their hulls to make them less visible, less of a target. Still, the humans never spoke. They didn't issue demands or joint statements. They simply erased the enemy, system by system, ship by ship. One Terran War memo, later found by a spy, summed it up in 3 lines. No diplomacy, no arrests, no mercy. We were silent once. Never again. 3 months after that first ambush, the Dominion border collapsed. The Keth High Command ordered a full-scale investigation. Over a dozen fleets were sent to hunt down the human ghost armada. None returned. A sense of dread spread through the Galactic Council. Civilizations that had mocked humanity's weakness began strengthening their defenses, not because they planned a fight, but because they feared being noticed. For the first time in 1,000 years, the proud and ancient powers of the galaxy whispered the same word in fear. Humans. Back on Earth, Admiral Talon watched the live feed from the Recon Division. Glowing red dots representing Keth fleets faded one by one. He turned to his officers. Keep the silence. Don't give them a target. Don't give them a reason to unite. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll already be too late. The officer beside him hesitated. We'll destroy them all, sir? Talon's eyes stayed fixed on the map. Not destroy. Teach them a lesson they'll never forget. Outside his command window, human warships gleamed under the shadow of the moon, a silent fleet ready to strike again. The blackness of space stretched ahead, deep and endless, but not empty anymore. It was full of resolve, fury, and memory. And the Dominion, once a symbol of terror across the stars, began to tremble at the thought of the quiet hunters coming for them, the ghosts of Erebus 9. By the time the 4th Dominion fleet vanished, the galaxy could no longer pretend that nothing was happening. Entire battle groups, each carrying hundreds of ships, were disappearing into silence. No debris, no distress calls, no survivors. Just empty space where once there had been fire and command. The Galactic Council convened in its massive circular chamber on Gallus Prime, a city of glass spires floating among the clouds. Representatives from more than 40 species gathered around the central platform, their voices echoing through the vaulted hall. Human pirates, a Keth commander growled, his armor plates rattling. That's what they are, a degenerate race of scavengers hiding behind stolen technology. Across from him, a slender being from the Thar Confederacy clicked its mandibles. If they're just scavengers, Commander, tell us, why do they keep winning? The room fell quiet. For years, the Council had laughed at humanity's ambitions. They had called them emotional, chaotic, impulsive. But now, That same chaos seemed to become their greatest strength. Humans didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't use predictable tactics or formations. They ambushed, adapted, and vanished again. No other species could match their creativity or their fury. And fury it was. Every surviving Dominion broadcast had the same chilling detail. Before their fleets were destroyed, human ships would open a single communication channel, sending the same brief message in hundreds of languages. This is justice for Erebus 9. Nothing more. No threats, no gloating, just quiet finality. The Keth ambassador slammed his fist on the table. Justice, he hissed. They call vengeance justice? A tall, scaled representative of the Alari raised a clawed hand. Perhaps they no longer care what we call it. Others murmured in agreement. The tension in the room thickened. At the center of the council chamber, the supreme moderator, a being of ancient age and authority, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but heavy. You must all remember that it was the Keth Dominion who broke the peace treaties. Humanity did not begin this war. The Keth ambassador spat. They could have come to us with diplomacy. They did, she replied softly. You answer with plasma fire. The gallery fell silent again. Outside the chamber, galactic media stations were spreading fear. Humanity rises, one headline read. Another called them the Silent Legion. Traitors refused enter Terran sectors. Colonies near human borders evacuated just in case. In less than a year, the balance of galaxy had shifted. Once, the Keth Dominion had stood untouchable, strongest in fleet and firepower. Now, their borders were shrinking day by day. Even their allies started cutting communication, afraid to be associated with a losing side. But it wasn't just the destruction that terrified the galaxy. It was how quiet the humans remained. There were no declarations, no grand announcements, no politics. The Council had tried sending envoys to Earth, but none ever received a reply. Their messages came back undelivered, as if Earth itself had vanished. And perhaps, in some ways, it had. Beneath Earth's surface, deep below oceans and continents, the Terran Vanguard Command worked without pause. Every nation, once proudly independent, was now united under a single voice. New ships were being built at rates that defied all known logistics. Entire moons were hollowed out into shipyards. Civilian industries turned overnight into war factories. To outsiders, human space looked empty, but those brave or foolish, enough to cross the border, described seeing brief flashes of light deep within nebulae, followed by nothing. Some said they could feel the humans watching, calculating, waiting. The Keth Dominion was beginning to unravel. Refugee ships left its core worlds, carrying terrified aliens who wanted nothing to do with this war. Rumors spread like wildfire that the humans had created invisible fleets, drones that could mimic entire armadas, and weapons that could rip stars apart. Most of it wasn't true, but the fear was real. There was a saying growing among the galactic populace now. You never hear the humans coming. You only realize they were there when it's already too late. The Galactic Council grew paranoid. Every session dissolved into shouting matches. The moderator tried to maintain peace, but whispers of collapsing governments were already starting to spread. Planets began fortifying themselves, not against the Keth, but against humanity. For the first time in living memory, the predators of the galaxy felt hunted. Meanwhile, far from the shining halls of Gallus Prime, Human Fleet Admiral Reese Talon stood before the massive window of the Vanguard flagship, watching a Keth world burn in silence. The fires looked distant, almost peaceful from orbit. His communications officer approached carefully. Sir, the operation is complete. The Keth shipyard are gone. Talon nodded once. Casualties? None on our side. The drone performed perfectly. He clasped his hands behind his back. Very good. Prepare the next target. The officer hesitated. Another strike, sir? Some of the crew are uneasy. They think the message is already clear. Talon turned slowly, calm but cold. The message is not for them. It's for the whole galaxy. They called us weak. Let them see what our silence means. Outside his viewport, the remains of the Keth planet cracked and broke apart. pieces glowing red in the void. Each fragment drifted into the darkness like an ember in infinite night. Back in the council chamber, an emergency broadcast broke into the meeting mid-session. The room dimmed, and a holographic feed filled the center. It showed a Keth world, Marin 7, shattering under a blinding explosion. "Another gone," whispered the Alari representative. No one moved. Then, slowly, the Thar delegate whispered, "They don't just fight battles anymore. They're making examples." The Keth ambassador stood, trembling with rage and fear. "We will annihilate them." The moderator's voice cut through the chaos, soft but firm. "Can you? Do you even know where they are?" He opened his mouth, then said nothing. For the first time in centuries, the great militaries of the galaxy had no target, no clue, and no hope of controlling the situation. Humanity had vanished behind a curtain of silence, only to strike when least expected. At the meeting's end, as the delegations dispersed in uneasy silence, the moderator turned to her aide. "Mark my words," she said quietly. "The time of the Dominion is over. Soon, the time of fear will begin. And this time, it will belong to everyone." Outside, the infinite stars of the galaxy shone cold and uncaring. Somewhere within that endless dark, hidden fleets lay in waiting, steel shadows forged by grief and fury. And in the quiet between stars, the humans prepared their next move. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand what it meant for humanity to go silent. Silence was not weakness. It was a sound before the storm. The war had no official beginning, but everyone in the galaxy knew it was reaching its end. Human space had expanded like a storm front, dark and unstoppable. Every Keth world that resisted was purged, every fleet sent to fight disappeared, and every political ally who dared condemn humanity suddenly went silent. Now, there was only one battlefield left, Sol, the solar system. To the Keth Dominion's high command, it seemed like the perfect chance for victory. Earth, the homeworld of humans, lay exposed in the center, surrounded by familiar planets and aging infrastructure. Destroy the cradle, they thought, and the entire species would finally collapse. They gathered everything they had left. Over 6,000 warships, battleships larger than cities carriers, and dreadnoughts older than history itself. It was said to be the largest single fleet assembled since the Great Council Wars. Their intent was clear. They would strike hard, strike fast, and erase humanity from the stars. When the Keth fleet dropped out of warp near Mars' orbit, space itself seemed to shudder. The red planet turned faint beneath the glow of their engines. "Targets confirmed," growled Admiral Velker, commander of the invasion. "Move into formation. End this quickly. We will burn their world." The first phase went as expected. No resistance. Their scanners showed dead silence. No fleets, no transmissions, not even defensive satellites. Velker sneered. "See? The humans have already run," he muttered, weak to the last breath. But then, unbeknownst to him, something began to stir beneath the shadows of Jupiter's moon Io. The human Terran Vanguard fleet was waiting, hidden behind radiation storms and electromagnetic pulses. The united human force had been prepared for this moment for almost 2 years. Thousands of warships lined up in precise formation, painted in adaptive plating that reflected no light. Every ship carried the same emblem etched deep into its hull, 3 silver lines crossing a crimson star, an answer to the Keth's own symbol. Fleet Commander Reese Talone stood before his staff, his uniform spotless, his expression grim. Around him, holographic tactical displays pulsed with crimson and blue dots, red for the Keth, blue for them. "Every system is green," said his lieutenant. "Orders, sir?" Talone gazed at the screen for a long moment. "For Erebus 9, he said softly. Then louder, "Deploy the Vanguard. Engage." From the void, the human fleet emerged like ghosts waking from a long slumber. They ignited their engines simultaneously, casting blue light across the darkness. To the Keth, it looked as though the night itself had come alive. "Multiple contacts," shouted a Keth officer. "Reading hundreds, no, thousands of ships." Where did they come from? Before the Dominion fleet could adjust, the first human salvo struck. Kinetic slugs moving at near light speed ripped through armor plating. Electromagnetic torpedoes exploded silently across battle lines, disabling sensors and comms. In seconds, half the Keth front line was blind. Velker roared orders, but chaos spread faster than discipline could contain. Human ships wove between their massive warships, using agility and precision rather than brute force. Battleships turned against one another as falsified signals confused their sensors. Then came the Vanguard protocol. Without warning, entire asteroids shifted from nearby Mars orbit. Each rock had been equipped with hidden fusion drives, turning them into colossal weapons. They accelerated like metal meteors, slamming into the Keth's capital ships. The impacts created silent shockwaves that shredded hulls and scattered debris through the fleet. Impossible, Velker gasped. They're weaponizing entire moons. On the bridge of the human flagship Aegis Terra, Admiral Talon watched the destruction unfold. They wanted our home, he murmured. Now they'll see what it means to fight a species that has one worth dying for. Earth's orbit lit up like a sunrise of steel. The combined human fleets, Earth Navy, Lunar Guard, Martian Legion, and Outworld alliances, moved as one living organism. Even civilian transports have been converted into warships, their sides bristling with rail cannons and drone swarms. One Keth commander tried to withdraw, but every escape point was already blocked. Warp lanes collapsed under interference. Humanity had sealed the system with precision years earlier. There was no escape. For 43 hours, the battle for Sol raged. Space became a graveyard of fire, shattered ships, drifting hulls, and fading lights. But through it all, the human fleet adapted relentlessly. Every loss was met with 2 new victories. Every Keth advance ended in a trap. When it finally ended, silence returned. Velker's flagship, crippled and burning, drifted helplessly between Mars and Earth. His remaining officers abandoned the bridge. Their courage evaporated. The great Keth armada was gone. Every other ship had been reduced to ash and orbiting wreckage. Then the human comms frequency opened across all channels. A calm voice spoke, transmitted to every surviving Keth ship, to every beacon, to every listening post in the galaxy. This is Admiral Reese Talon of the Terran Vanguard. We asked for peace. You gave us war. Now you will remember what that means. The message repeated once, then cut to static. On Earth, billions watched the skies light up like stars being born. Civilians cried and shouted as the last Keth symbols burned away. Across hundreds of colonies, beacons flashed the same 2 words. Humanity endures. Velker, broken and defeated, watched Earth grow larger through a shattered viewport. The last thing he saw before his ship's life support failed was a single fleck of silver light, a human rescue drone scanning the wreckage, marking his ship not for capture, but for disposal. When the transmission of the battle reached the Galactic Council weeks later, the chamber fell into dead silence. No one spoke. No one dared. Humanity had done the impossible. They had turned their home system into an impenetrable fortress, and with it, they had destroyed the largest navy in history. The Keth Dominion, once feared across the galaxy, was no more. Their empire had been burned to ash by the very species they had underestimated. To many, it was just another war lost. But to those who understood, the ancient races, the traders, the historians, it was something far more profound. It was a warning. For the first time in millennia, the predators of the stars realized that humanity was not a fragile, emotional species to be controlled or pitted. They were patient, resourceful, and, when provoked, merciless. And as the fires of Sol faded into the background, one truth echoed across every corner of the galaxy, whispered in fear and awe alike. When humanity fights, the universe burns. The battle for Sol marked the end of the war, but the beginning of fear came after. The ruins of the Keth Dominion floated in silence, broken ships, shattered symbols, and hollow worlds stripped bare. Entire sectors that once glowed with Keth colonies now showed only the faint embers of annihilation. In the records of the galaxy, the Dominion had stood for 5,000 years. It fell in less than 2. There was no celebration, no human parades, no fireworks, no songs of victory. Humanity did not cheer. Humanity simply stopped fighting. The surviving Keth fleet sent one last transmission to Earth, a plea for peace, broadcast in a dozen languages. Admiral Talon ignored it for 3 entire days. When he finally responded, it was with a single line. Peace was always an option. You were the ones who closed that door. After that, no more transmissions came from Keth space. The Dominion surrender was complete. But even as the guns fell silent, the galaxy trembled. No one knew what humanity would do next. The Terran vanguard had not disbanded. Instead, it continued to grow. Ambassadors did not return to the Galactic Council. Civilian ships were still being refitted for defense. Massive shipyards ringed Earth, Luna, and Mars. Every telescope, every listening post in nearby systems kept watch on Terran space with nervous eyes. For years, humans had been the young race, the upstarts, the dreamers who laughed too loudly and reached too far. But now, they were something else, something no one could clearly name. A few called them warriors. Others said monsters. Yet most quietly agreed. Humanity had become the balance that the galaxy could no longer ignore. In the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, the air was heavy. The delegates shifted uneasily under the pale light. No humans were present, but their absence filled the chamber louder than any speech could have. The Thar representative broke the silence first. "The Dominion is gone," he said, his voice clicking softly. "Half our trade routes are gone with it. The balance of power has collapsed." The moderator's old, tired voice replied, "Because we allowed injustice to become law. Because we mistook silence for submission." One Keth survivor, pale and trembling, rose from his seat. His crest hung low, his eyes bloodshot. "They could have destroyed us all," he whispered. "They didn't. Why?" The moderator didn't look at him. "Perhaps mercy frightens you more than death." While the council argued, life in human space began to heal. The ashes of Erebus 9 became a garden. The shattered colony was rebuilt over 10 years, stone by stone, not as a memorial but as a beginning. Its new domes bore a single engraved inscription at the entrance: "We remember so that we never repeat it." Children born after the war grew up hearing stories not just of vengeance, but of unity. The time when every human world stood together as one species. The Terran vanguard became the new protector of peace among humanity, answerable not to politicians, but to the people themselves. And through all of it, humans kept to themselves. They didn't send scouts beyond their claimed territory. They didn't invade anyone else. They rebuilt, they prepared, and they waited. No one could tell if that waiting meant patience or warning. From the far edges of explored space, alien travelers sometimes reported strange encounters. A faint signal in the dark, a small patrol ship drifting beside them for an hour and then vanishing. Sometimes a short transmission came through in perfect translation. "Stay on your path. Stay out of Terran space." The message was never angry, just a statement of boundary, simple, final, and nobody ever ignored it twice. Even centuries-old empires grew cautious. Trade routes bent around human sectors, stretching travel times by weeks just to avoid the cold silence that lingered beyond Terran borders. Some scholars claimed humanity had changed the psychology of the entire galaxy. Others said it wasn't change, it was correction. For too long, the elder races had forgotten what fear was. Humanity reminded them. On the bridge of the Aegis Terra, Admiral Reese Talon gazed through the broad viewport. Earth hung below, shining in quiet peace. Once the heart of chaos, now a symbol of survival. His first officer approached. "Sir, Command is asking if we'll finally decommission some of the ships. The war's long over." Talon shook his head. "Wars don't end when the fighting stops. They end when everyone remembers why they shouldn't start again." The younger officer shifted uneasily. "Do you think they'll ever forget, sir?" Talon gave a faint smile. It wasn't joy, it was weary understanding. Not after what they saw. Fear is a stronger memory than pain. He turned back toward the stars, where countless lights blinked like distant eyes. Each one was a world, a story, perhaps a future threat. But for now, all seemed quiet. A soft voice from the communication deck interrupted him. "Incoming signals, sir. It's from the Council. They're requesting diplomatic talks." Talon considered it for a long moment, then nodded. Prepare the envoy ship. Let them see we're still listening. But make sure they understand." He paused, looking at the stars, his reflection shining faintly against the glass. "We may be peaceful again, but we will never be harmless." Years later, historians would argue about that era. They would call it the Silent Decade, when neither war nor diplomacy defined humanity, only the weight of their silence. Art, literature, and philosophy from alien worlds began to reflect the same theme: restraint born from fear. No one crossed human space without permission. No one claimed human resources. No one risked another incident. And yet, deep down, most civilizations knew the truth. The calm wasn't permanent. It was merely peace on humanity's terms. Humanity had proven that even the smallest world could change the fate of the stars. They had shown that emotion, once mocked by the elder species, could become the most powerful weapon of all. When humans fought, they did not fight for conquest or for pride. They fought to never be broken again. And the galaxy, for the first time, understood what that meant. When the humans finally turned their eyes outward again, exploring, rebuilding, dreaming of the stars, the civilizations beyond waited, watching, remembering the lesson carved into history by fire and silence. Because everyone knew the truth now. When humanity fought back, the galaxy finally knew fear.